Once upon a time, in a small community in the eastern part of Nigeria where the sun kissed the earth with its golden rays, lived a young woman named Chioma. Chioma's laughter rang out like the song of birds at dawn, and her smile was as bright as the full moon on a clear night. She was beloved by all, for her heart was kind and her beauty unmatched. Little did she know her life was about to take a turn that even the stars could not predict. Chioma was the eldest daughter and the pride of her family. At the bustling market, she sold yams and vegetables with a charm that drew customers from far and wide. "Chioma, you're the jewel of Amaudo," her mother often said. "One day a man worthy of you will come." That man appeared one sunny afternoon in the form of Emeka. Dressed smartly with a confident smile, he approached her stall. "Good day," he said, his voice smooth. "I heard this is where beauty is sold." Chioma laughed, her cheeks flushing. "Then you've been misinformed, sir. I sell only yams." From that day on, Emeka became a regular. He bought more than he needed, staying to chat long after his purchases were made. He spoke of his job in the city, his ambitions, and his dream of building a family. Chioma found herself drawn to his charm and confidence. Within months, he asked for her hand in marriage. Her parents were thrilled. Emeka was a man of means, someone who could provide a secure future. The wedding was a grand affair with music and dance that echoed through the community. Marriage, they say, is like a journey through uncharted waters. For Chioma, the early days were like sailing on calm seas. Emeka was attentive and generous. He brought gifts from the city, kissed her forehead before leaving for work, and held her close in the evenings. But as the months turned to years, small cracks began to appear. At first, Chioma dismissed the changes in Emeka's behavior as mere stress from work. He would come home late, his excuses vague and dismissive. Sometimes he would return smelling of alcohol, his clothes wrinkled as if he had spent the night elsewhere. Chioma tried to brush it off, thinking that he was just going through a tough phase. But as the months went by, the changes in Emeka's behavior became more pronounced. He would lash out at Chioma for no reason, his anger simmering just below the surface. Chioma found herself walking on eggshells, never knowing when Emeka's temper would flare up. One evening, as they sat in their modest living room, Chioma asked gently, "Emeka, is everything okay? You've been distant, you have changed." He glanced at her briefly. "Why do you ask such questions? You nag a lot, woman. Focus on your duties and stop imagining things." Then he stood up and walked out of the house. His words cut deep, but Chioma swallowed her pain. She sat alone in their living room, tears streaming down her face. She felt like she was losing her husband and she didn't know how to stop it. She confided in Chika, her childhood friend, who dismissed her worries. "Men will always be men," Chika said. "Don't trouble him. Just be the good wife you are." But the situation worsened. Emeka began returning home reeking of alcohol or won't return till the next day. Sometimes he carried the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume. Chioma's heart ached, but she stayed silent, convincing herself that her love and patience would bring him back. The night was thick with the sounds of the crickets and the distant hum of the village. But within Chioma's home, a storm was brewing, a storm she could not escape. It was another night like so many others, with Emeka coming home late, his movements unsteady and erratic. His once loving gaze was now replaced by coldness, and his patience for anything, least of all Chioma, had all but vanished. When Emeka staggered into their home past midnight reeking of alcohol, Chioma, heavily pregnant for their second child, had dozed off while waiting up for him. Exhaustion had taken its toll on her. The constant juggling of housework, the care for their son, and the emotional strain of living with an increasingly distant husband left her drained. "Where is my food, Chioma?" Emeka demanded. His voice was loud, his temper already simmering and his tone dripping with frustration. Chioma felt the anger in his voice. With her feet swollen and her back aching, she rose from the bed to prepare semo. She placed a pot of water on the fire and sat on the kitchen stool. Resting her head on the table, she closed her eyes for just a moment and sleep overtook her. The acrid smell of burning jerked her awake. She rushed to the stove and saw that the water hard-boiled dry, the pot now smoldering with smoke. She looked around frantically before she could even boil another water. Emeka was already in the kitchen. His face twisted in rage as he saw the burnt pot. "You useless woman!" he shouted, his voice echoing like a clap of thunder. "How dare you sleep when I'm hungry?" "I'm sorry," Chioma whispered, trying to make things right. "I was tired, I was waiting for you. Please, Before she could finish, he slapped her across the face, hard enough to send her stumbling backward. "You think you can make excuses for everything? You're useless," he yelled. Her body hit the floor and Emeka kicked her, his anger erupting like a volcano. His words were cruel and heartless. "You're lazy and good for nothing. You can't even make a simple meal." Chioma, her face wet with tears and blood, barely managed to sit up, begging for mercy. She clutched her belly, trembling in fear and pain as Emeka kept striking her. His anger was uncontrollably. As he stormed out of the house, Chioma stayed on the cold kitchen floor, too weak to move. The silence in the house was deafening, and the only thing Chioma could hear were her own sobs, echoing in the emptiness. One morning, Mommy Johnson, a kind and curious neighbor, knocked on Chioma's door after hearing strange noises the night before. When Chioma opened the door, Mommy Johnson gasped at the sight of her bruised face. "Chioma, what happened to you?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Chioma, avoiding her gaze, replied, "I fell, Mommy Johnson. This pregnancy has made me so clumsy." But Mommy Johnson wasn't convinced. "Falling isn't good for you or the baby," she warned. "You should see a doctor." Chioma assured her she would after her son returned home from school. Mommy Johnson pressed on, asking about Emeka, Chioma's husband. Chioma explained that his work in the city kept him busy, though she insisted he was a good husband who tried his best for their family. "Emeka is the best husband anyone could ask for. His work keeps him busy, but he makes up for his absence in so many ways. He's loving, caring, and always puts us first," Chioma said. Sensing Chioma's unease, Mommy Johnson changed the subject, asking about her plans for the baby and offering to teach her how to make the special pap she used to give her son, Johnson. Chioma thanked her. When Mommy Johnson declined her offer of food and hurried back to her own home, Chioma closed the door quietly, her mind clouded with thoughts she couldn't share. As years passed, the heavy toll of Chioma's suffering was felt not just by her, but by the innocent lives of her children, whose hearts were scarred by what they witnessed every day. Namdi, their oldest son, was the first to understand that something was wrong. At just 8 years old, he could sense the tension in the air, the sharp words, and the loud arguments that punctuated the evenings. Every night, Namdi would stand in the doorway of their room, his small hands clenched in fists as he watched his father's angry outbursts. One night, after Emeka had stormed off again, Namdi asked his mother, "Mummy, why does Daddy shout at you all the time? Does he not love us?" Chioma's heart broke at the innocent question. She knelt beside him, brushing away his tears, and kissed his forehead. "Daddy loves us, Namdi. Sometimes people get very sad or angry and they don't know how to show their love." But deep down, Chioma knew this wasn't true. The love was gone. The man who had once whispered sweet words in her ear now only hurled insults at her. She knew that Namdi was too young to understand the depths of pain, but the sadness in his eyes spoke volumes. Emeka, her second child, was only 4, but she too felt the effects of the anger that filled their home. The sound of Emeka's raised voice sent her into fits of crying. She would hide under her mother's arms, shaking in fear. At night she wet the bed, something Chioma had never seen before. "Mummy, I'm scared," Emeka would whisper, clinging to her in the darkness. Chioma would hold her close, rubbing her back. "It's okay, my love. Mummy is here and you're safe with me." But Chioma knew the truth. Her children were not safe. They were caught in the middle of a war they had no part in starting. They were being molded into children who would forever carry the weight of her broken marriage. One night, after an argument had left Emeka's fury unchecked, he began to shout at Emeka for spilling some water on the floor. "Look at what you've done," Emeka screamed. "You are so careless." Chioma rushed to her daughter's side, but before she could protect her, Namdi stepped forward. His small fists were clenched, his face scrunched in defiance. "Stop shouting at my sister." Emeka turned to face him, towering over the little boy. He raised his hand, threatening to strike him, but Chioma moved in front of Namdi, blocking the blow. "Please, Emeka, not the children. They're just kids." But Emeka didn't care. He stormed out of the house, leaving Chioma and the children in a tense, painful silence. The hurt in her children's eyes lingered long after the arguments faded. They were learning a lesson no child should ever have to learn: how to survive in a house filled with fear. Chioma's body healed, but the emotional scars remained. She became withdrawn, afraid to speak up or assert herself. Emeka's behavior continued to deteriorate and life became a relentless cycle of pain and silence. By day she worked tirelessly, balancing her business and caring for their children. By night she endured Emeka's demands, her spirit slowly eroding. Her body, mind and soul had endured as much as they could. With 2 children to care for and pregnant with her 3rd child, Chioma pushed herself to the brink. She worked tirelessly. One evening, while preparing Emeka's favorite meal, she felt the world spinning. The constant worry, long hours of work and emotional and physical abuse had taken their toll on her body. Her vision blurred, and the ground beneath her feet seemed to disappear. She fell to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her body screamed in protest, but she didn't have the strength to fight it anymore. She collapsed. She was taken to the hospital by neighbors who heard her children's cry for help. When she awoke, the pale light of the hospital greeted her. Her mother sat by her bed, her eyes red with tears. "Chioma, my child, what is happening? What has become of you? These bruises, this exhaustion, what have you been hiding?" The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "Madam, your body has endured too much stress. You've put yourself in danger and almost lost your life. It's a miracle you survived. We tried our best, but we couldn't save the baby." Her world seemed to crumble around her. She had already lost so much: her dignity, her happiness and her health. But losing this child, her 3rd baby, was the breaking point for her. As her children gathered around her, she realized she could no longer endure in silence. "Mama, I need help," Chioma wept. "Mama, Emeka is not the man I thought he was. I stayed silent because I wanted to be a good wife, not because I was ashamed, and I didn't want my children to grow up without their father, but I am tired. Mama, I am tired." Her mother embraced her. "Marriage is not a cage. You stayed silent for too long and silence almost killed you. If you are suffering, speak out. My dear, no marriage is worth your life, Chioma. You must leave before it is too late." Her mother nodded. "You're coming home with me. Enough is enough." For the first time in years, Chioma allowed herself to consider her own well-being. The thought of leaving Emeka was terrifying, but the fear of dying, of leaving her children motherless, was even worse. That night, as she lay in the hospital bed, Chioma made a decision. She would no longer stay in silence. Chioma's journey from pain to power was not easy, but it was necessary, both for her own healing and for the future of her children. With her family's support, Chioma left Emeka, taking her children with her. It wasn't an easy decision, but she knew it was the only way to protect herself and her children. Emeka tried to stop her, but with the help of some neighbors and the doctor who was willing to testify against him for physically assaulting his pregnant wife, Emeka backed down and let Chioma leave peacefully. And as tradition demands, the bride price he paid was returned to him in full. As she packed her bags and said goodbye to the only life she had known for years, Chioma felt a mix of emotions. She was scared of the unknown, but she was also relieved to be free from the toxic marriage. Chioma returned to her parents' home a free woman, her heart heavy but her resolve stronger than ever. The village buzzed with gossip, some accusing her of abandoning her husband, while others whispered that she had been right to leave. But Chioma didn't care. She had made a choice for her children, and that was all that mattered. She worked hard to provide for her children, selling her vegetables and yams in the village market. Though it was difficult fending for 2 kids alone, she had control over her life again. Her kids were safe, and for the first time in a long time she felt free. With the help of a counselor at her church, Chioma began to rebuild her life. She started attending therapy sessions, where she learned to heal from the emotional trauma she had endured. She also started taking classes to improve her skills and become financially independent. And soon she was able to rent an apartment and move out of her parents' house with her kids. As Chioma slowly regained her confidence, she began to see herself in a new light. She realized that she was strong, capable, and deserving of love and respect. As Chioma continued to rebuild her life, she also began to heal her relationship with her children. She spent more time with them, showing them affection and teaching them that they deserved happiness and safety. Slowly, the scars of the past began to fade, though they would never disappear completely. She enrolled Namdi and Emeka in school, ensuring they received an education. Despite the challenges, Chioma worked tirelessly to provide for them, and she became an example of strength and resilience. Her children, seeing her determination, began to grow more confident and secure in themselves. One evening, Namdi came to her, a smile lighting up his face. "Mummy, I did well in school today. I want to make you proud," he said. His words brought tears to Chioma's eyes. It was the first time in years that she had felt truly proud of herself, and she knew she had to continue fighting, not just for her own happiness, but for the bright future she envisioned for her children. As Chioma was cooking dinner for her children, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. She looked around at the happy faces of her children and felt grateful for the second chance she had been given. "I'm sorry, children," Chioma said, her voice filled with emotion. "I'm sorry for not protecting you from your father's abuse. But I promise you, from now on, we will live a life filled with love, laughter, and happiness." Her children hugged her tightly, and Chioma knew that she had finally found her true self. She was no longer the silent, suffering wife she had once been. She was a strong, brave, and independent woman, ready to take on the world. Chioma's story spread like wildfire in the community, inspiring other women to speak out against domestic violence. She became a vocal advocate for women's rights, using her experience to help others. Chioma's children grew up in a loving and supportive environment, and they never forgot the sacrifices their mother made for them. Chioma's story was a testament to the human spirit's ability to overcome adversity and rise above the ashes. Her story was one of pain, yes, but it was also one of immense strength and transformation. She had endured physical and emotional abuse, but she had risen from the ashes of her suffering. The journey was long and filled with challenges, but it was also a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. She learned that her worth was not defined by the cruelty of others, but by the love she had for herself and her children. Though her marriage had broken her in many ways, it also pushed her to find the courage to rebuild. She found strength in the support of other women, in the quiet moments of connection with her children, and in her newfound sense of purpose. Now Chioma could look into the future without fear. She had broken the cycle of abuse and was determined to raise her children in an environment of love, safety, and respect. No longer would she let the past define her. Chioma had finally learned to live for herself, and that was the most powerful thing of all. Her story was one of courage, not just in the face of hardship, but in the choice to live a life that was worthy of the love and respect she had always deserved. This story teaches that no one should suffer in silence. Abuse is never acceptable, and seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. It also reminds us that staying in a toxic relationship for appearances can harm not only the victim but also the children involved who suffer emotionally and physically. Prioritizing safety and well-being is essential, and with courage and support, it is possible to rebuild a life of peace and happiness. Your worth is far greater than any societal expectation. Your worth is immeasurable. You deserve love, respect, and safety. Let Chioma's story inspire you to prioritize your well-being and never settle for less than you deserve. I love you all. Thank you for watching this amazing video. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed creating it. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, share and comment on the lessons you have learned, and let me know where you are watching from. See you in my next video. Bye.